Okay, let's talk about angle relationships. We're going to talk about three kinds: complementary angles, supplementary angles, and vertical angles. First, let's start with the complementary ones. So here we have a right angle. You can see it's a 90-degree angle here where these two rays are perpendicular to one another. And we're going to put another ray in there, and we realize that that creates two angles, angle 1 and angle 2. And they're adjacent to one another. That means adjacent angles share one of the rays that creates the angle. So angle 1 is right here, angle 2 is right here. They share this middle ray right here. So let's give a definition for complementary angles. They are adjacent angles that form a right angle whose measures add to 90 degrees is what a right angle means. So angle 1 and angle 2 here are complementary angles. They're adjacent and they add to 90 degrees. So then we can do all sorts of calculations to find one angle if we know it's complementary with another. So for instance, if measure of angle 1 equals 55 degrees, what is measure of angle 2? So we can set up an equation here that 55 plus measure of angle 2, and I should have said what m and then this little angle sign and then an angle's name means. It's just measure of angle 1 in this case, or measure of angle 2. So just a shorthand notation so you don't have to write out the word measure, etc. So we have 55 plus measure of angle 2 equals 90. Now we want to solve for measure of angle 2, so we would just minus 55 from both sides, and we get measure of angle 2 equals 35 degrees. So we can calculate that just knowing that what measure of angle 1 is and that they're complementary. Let's do another example here. If measure of angle 1 equals 3x minus 4, and measure of angle 2 equals 5x minus 2, what is x? So in this case, we're not solving for what the measure of the angle is. We're solving for this variable x. But we know the relationship between these two things. We know that measure of angle 1 and measure of angle 2 add up to what? Right, 90. So we can add these two things here, these two expressions, and set them equal to 90 like that. Does that make sense? Okay, good. So now let's go ahead and combine like terms. So we have the x's was 3x plus 5x, so that's 8x. And the minus 4 and the minus 2 were minus 6. So now we have 8x minus 6 equals 90. Now we can just solve this equation. We want to get rid of that 6 first, so we'll add 6 to both sides. That'll give us 8x equals 96. Then we want to get rid of that 8. So it's multiplying by the x. We do the opposite. We divide. 8 divided by 8 will be 1 on the left-hand side. In other words, those 8's will cancel. We'll have just x equals 96 divided by 8 is 12, right? So that's our answer. So x equals 12 when we know those angles are complementary. So that's complementary. Now let's talk about supplementary angles over here in the middle section. Very similar vocabulary word. It just means angles that form a straight line. Okay, so I started with a straight line and then I put a ray right here to form two angles. These two angles, angle 1 and 2, are supplementary. And if you remember, they would add up to kind of two right angles or 180 degrees. So let's write that as our definition. Supplementary angles are adjacent angles, again they have to share a ray at one side, that form a straight line, and then therefore their measures add to 180 degrees. So you can work with these very similarly to how you work with complementary angles. So for instance, if measure of angle 1 is 136 degrees, what is measure of angle 2? Well, again, you can set up an equation, 136 plus measure of angle 2 equals 180. And then you can subtract 136 from both sides and you get measure of angle 2 equals 44 degrees. Make sense? And then you can do other ones, kind of a similar example here. If measure of angle 1 equals 12t plus 24 and measure of angle 2 equals 6t minus 6, what is t? Well, how would you set this up? That's right, you do kind of like you did over on this side, but instead of it equaling 90, it would equal, right, 180. So here we've taken what measure of angle 1 equals, 12t plus 24, added it to measure of angle 2, 6t minus 6, and those have to add to 180 because they're supplementary angles. So now again, we'll go ahead and solve. We'll go through this pretty quick. Combine like terms. So we have 18t plus 18 equals 180. Subtract 18 from both sides. Little mental math there. We get 18t equals 162. Now what do we have to do? Right, divide by 18. And then with a calculator, or you can do this by hand, or maybe in your head, you can find that t equals 9. Okay? So that's supplementary angle, very similar to complementary angles. Now one last thing, vertical angles here. What is a vertical angle? Well, here I've drawn two lines, And I'm going to go, you can see they form 4 angles there. There's 1, 2, 3, and 4. And let's do a definition of vertical angles. When 2 lines cross to form 4 angles, the angles opposite from each other are vertical angles and have equal measures. That's important. Vertical angles have equal measures. So which ones are vertical angles here? We'll measure, angle 1 and angle 3 are vertical angles, because remember, they're the opposite angles when 2 lines cross. And what's the other pair of vertical angles? That's right, 2 and 4 are also vertical angles. So angle 1 and angle 4 are, what are those? Are they vertical? No. What are they? Well, they form a line together, a straight line, so they are supplementary angles. And if measure of angle 4 equals 3a minus 4 and measure of angle 2 equals 2a plus 7, what is a? So this is a very similar problem to what we were doing over here. We're trying to figure out this variable. So we have to ask ourselves, what's the relationship between measure of angle 4 and measure of angle 2? Are they complementary, supplementary, or vertical? That's right, they're vertical. They're opposite from one another when 2 lines cross. So what we know is that their measures are equal, so we could say that this, 3a minus 4, is equal to 2a plus 7. So let's go ahead and write that. 3a minus 4 equals 2a plus 7. We want to combine like terms to get all the variables on one side. So let's go ahead and minus 2a from both sides. So then we'll have a minus 4 on the left side and just 7 on the right side. Now we need to get rid of that 4 by, that's right, adding. And then we get to a equals 11. And we calculate that based on vertical angles. So these 3 types, you should memorize the definitions. Looks like big words, but really pretty simple concept. Add up to 90, add up to 180 are equal to one another.